are back with the end of factoring today. Things that we know how to do so far. Your first step when you do any kind of factoring is to find the greatest common factor. So we should know how to do that first. After you find your greatest common factor, or at least check to see if you have a greatest common factor, then we can go through. We know how to factor if they're perfect square numbers, and then we know how to factor like normal when you set up the sets of parentheses. You're looking for two numbers that multiply to give you the last number, then add to give you the number in the middle. Today we're going to take a look at the last type of factoring, and that's factoring trinomials when you have a different number in the front. Now, all of the problems that we took a look at yesterday, they all were in the form of something like this. They all were like x squared minus 9x plus 20. So don't write this down. Just kind of telling you. So all the problems that we did yesterday were all 1x squared, or 1y squared, or 1c squared. They all had a coefficient of 1 in the front. Today we're going to take a look at problems that have different coefficients in the front, like the number 2 or the number 3. When you have a different coefficient in the front, you're not going to factor like normal. So you're no longer looking for two numbers that multiply to give you the last number and add to give you the number in the middle like we did yesterday. So I got 4 steps that I want to make sure you jot down, and these are going to be the 4 steps that you do only if you're factoring something that has a different coefficient in the front. So if it's 1x squared or 1m squared, then that's fine. You go through and factor like normal. But when there's a different number in the front, I want you to go through these 4 steps because you are not looking for two numbers that multiply to give you this and add to give you that, because it's not going to work out that way. So let's go through some problems. All right, the first one here, we're going to factor 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. And these are the 4 steps that we're going to use. Step 1, multiply the first and the last number. Step 2, factor like normal. Step 3, divide by the leading coefficient, which is the first number in the problem. And then step 4, get rid of fractions. So let's go through and get started. Just out of habit, I'm going to be putting like a little 1, little 2, little 3, number 4, so that we can correspond that or correlate that to our steps over here. So step 1, it says multiply the first and the last number. The first number is 2. The last number is 3. We're going to multiply that and bring everything else down. So that's going to give me x squared plus 5x plus 6. So that is step 1. We've multiplied the first and the last number. Step 2. Step 2 over there says factor like normal. So this is with the sets of parentheses. And we're going to factor like we did yesterday. This is what I call factoring like normal. So you're looking for two numbers that multiply to give you 6, add to give you 5. Multiplies to give you 6, adds to give you 5. So I'm going to put my x's here. That's going to be 3 and 2. 3 times 2 is 6, check. 3 plus 2 is 5, check. Step 3 says divide by the leading coefficient. So leading coefficient is the first number in the problem if it's in order, which it should be. It should go x squared, x, and then your number. So we're going to divide these numbers by the first number in the problem, which is the number 2. So I'm going to divide by 2, divide by 2. And simplify, reduce. So this becomes 3 halves, and then this becomes 1. So 3 halves, I cannot simplify that anymore. Leave it as 3 halves. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And we're on the very last step. The very last step says get rid of fractions. So you get rid of fractions by multiplying by the denominator. So if you have one. So this one doesn't need to be multiplied by anything, but this one does. My denominator is 2, so I'm going to multiply just this part of my fraction by 2. Because that's the only part that has the fraction. And you can't have fractions when you factor. So if I told you to give me factors of 12, you wouldn't say 3/4. If I told you to give me factors of 12, you wouldn't say 1/2. So we need to get rid of fractions. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 3 halves, you can put that in the calculator. It should give you 3. And then x plus 1. So this is our final answer. 2x plus 3 times x plus 1. Again, my final answer is 2x plus 3 times x plus 1. So 2x squared plus 5x plus 3 factors into 2x plus 3 times x plus 1. So that is our final answer. All right, let's definitely go through and try some more. Again, we got our 4 steps over there. We're going to go through and do our 4-step method for the next problem. So the next problem is 3x squared minus 14x minus 5. So 3x squared minus 14x minus 5. And we're going to go through and do our 4 steps over there. All right, step 1 says multiply the first and the last number. So we're going to multiply 3 times negative 5. That's going to give me x squared minus 14x, and 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. So that's step 1. So you now should have x squared minus 14x minus 15. Step 2. Step 2 says factor like normal. So this is when we set up our parentheses. We need to think of 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 15, add to give me negative 14. So 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 15, add to give me negative 14. So those numbers should be negative 15 and positive 1. So this is us factoring like normal. Next, it says divide by the leading coefficient. So that's step 3. So the first number in this problem is the number 3. So we're going to divide everything by 3 and reduce your fractions. 15 divided by 3 is 5. And this becomes a third. And we are on the very last step. And the last step says get rid of fractions. So this is the only one that has a fraction. So you get rid of fractions by multiplying by the denominator. My denominator in this problem is 3. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply just this one by 3. So I'm going to multiply just this fraction right here by the number 3. So that's going to give me x minus 5. Okay. I'm multiplying this by 3. And let me write that down so you can see that there. I'm multiplying this fraction by 3. So I got this number 3 that I'm multiplying it by. 3 times x is 3x. And 3 times a third is 1. So this is our final answer. So final answer is x minus 5 times 3x plus 1. So x minus 5 times 3x plus 1. Okay. Now I'm going to erase these if you're not finished. If you're watching the video, so you can pause it. But I am going to erase these and put a couple more up here for us to do and to go through and do our 4 steps, just so we can become a little more fluent at it and have some more practice. So that was 1 and 2. Number 3, we're going to factor 6x squared minus 35x plus 36. And then we're going to factor 5x squared minus 23x plus 12. So these are going to be the 2 problems that we're going to go through and factor this round. Still going to go through and do those 4 steps that I got over there on the board. All right, step 1. Okay. Step 1 says multiply the first and the last number. So we're going to do 6 times 36. Absolutely, numbers a little bigger. You can use a calculator. You should get x squared minus 35x plus 216. So if we need to use a calculator, there's no problem with that. We multiply the first and the last number. Step 2, factor like normal. So that's with the 2 sets of parentheses. Something times something has to give me x. We're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me 216, add to give me negative 35. So those 2 numbers are 27 and 8. Negative 27 times negative 8 is positive 216. Negative 27 plus negative 8 is negative 35. So this is just factoring like normal. So factor like normal. Keep going on step number 3, divide by the first number in the problem. My first number in the problem is a number 6. So I'm going to divide this by 6 and divide this by 6. So reduce your fractions if you need to. 27 over 6, make sure you reduce. 27 over 6 reduces to 9 halves. And 8 over 6 reduces to 4/3. So reduce, 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 reduce. So 27 over 6 reduces to 9/2. 8 over 6 reduces to 4/3. Now we're on the last step. This is the first one we've seen where we're going to have to multiply by two different fractions, and that's okay. So this one is going to have to get multiplied by 2. So this one's going to get multiplied by 2. And then this one's going to get multiplied by 3. So we're on the last step that says get rid of fractions. This one needs to be multiplied by 2, so we'll go through and distribute. This one needs to be multiplied by 3, so we're going to go through and distribute there as well. So that's going to give me 2 times x is 2x. And 2 times -9/2 is -9. Feel free to use a calculator if you need to. 3 times x is 3x. And 3 times -4/3 is -4. So this is our final answer. So we started with 6x squared minus 35x plus 36. That's what we started with. We're going through, we're doing these 4 steps. And when we finish with our 4th step, it gives us 2x minus 9 times 3x minus 4. So that's our answer for this problem. All right, number 4. Number 4, we need to factor 5x squared minus 23x plus 12. So 5x squared minus 23x plus 12. We're going to go through and do our 4 steps. So step 1. Says multiply the first and the last number. So 5 times 12 gives me 60. All right, so that's step 1. Step 2, we factor like normal. So we'll set up our 2 sets of parentheses. We need 2 numbers that are going to multiply to give me positive 60, add to give me negative 23. So those numbers are negative 20 and negative 3. Negative 20 times negative 3 gives me positive 60. Negative 20 plus negative 3 gives me negative 23. All right, step 3 is to divide by the leading coefficient. The first number in the problem is 5. So I'm going to divide this by 5, and I'm going to divide this by 5. Reduce, reduce, reduce. So let me slide over a little bit so you can see that last one over there, okay? So reduce, reduce, reduce. So this is going to give me 20 divided by 5 is 4. And 3/5 stays 3/5. I can't do anything with it. I cannot do anything with it. Leave it just like that. So finally, we're on step 4. Okay. Step 4 says get rid of fractions. So over here on our steps, get rid of fractions. You get rid of fractions by multiplying by the denominator. So we're going to multiply just this part by 5. So multiply this part by 5. So my final answer is going to be x minus 4. 5 times x is 5x. And 5 times negative 3/5. We're doing distributive property. So 5 times that gives me negative 3. And that is our final answer. Now, before I conclude this, I do want to show you one more that's going to work out a little differently. Okay, so I will leave that one on the board as a reference for us, and I would like to go through and do one more. So this will be number 5. All right, we're going to factor 3x squared minus 6x minus 45. So this is going to be the last one that we're going to factor, 3x squared minus 6x minus 45. Now, this one does have a different coefficient in the front. It's got 3. So you might be tempted to go here and go ahead and do your 4 steps. However, when you factor, your first step when you do any kind of factoring, little problem, big problem, medium problem, is to check for a greatest common factor. So if I look here, these have a greatest common factor. They have a number that will go into everything evenly. So they are all divisible by the number 3. So I'm going to take out a 3. When you take out your greatest common factor, everything else goes on the inside. 3 times something needs to give me 3x squared. 3 times something needs to give me negative 6x. And 3 times something needs to give me negative 45. So we took out the greatest common factor. 3 times x squared gives me that back. 3 times negative 2x gives me that back. 3 times negative 15 gives me that back. Now, with the other 4 problems that we did, they did not have a greatest common factor. So we went ahead and jumped into our 4 steps. This one had a greatest common factor, so that should be your first step. And it's going to make your life easier because now I can factor like normal. 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 15 and add to give me negative 2. And ta-da, we are finished with this problem. So when you're factoring different trinomials that have something other than 1 in the front, you're going to go through these 4 steps. Still be careful and make sure you check for a greatest common factor, however, because as you see with this last one that we did, it did save us some time and made our life easier.